gets nobody uses CDs in the universities, right? And then you allow the students to self-select into the different types of the industrial revolution. Okay? And then I could sell the book in principle. I mean, you can, because you don't have enough information, but I can sell it to each of you at the price, at your reservation price, at the maximum price you're willing to pay. So that's called personalized price. Okay. Or I can sell it at a different price to each consumer, depending on their browsing history. When they log into Amazon and they buy, right? So before you get tickets for the Maldives or something, I can sell it to you at like $150, and if you got tickets to nowhere, I sell it to you for $20. If you were a bus tickets, elderly subscription, I'll give you for $2. Okay? That's called personalized pricing. It's like a different price to each person based on how much I think you're going to pay. Okay. So then different chapters of the book talk about the different types of pricing simulation. Okay, so in this chapter we will personalize mini pricing, chapter 8. Then there's chapter 9 talking about mini pricing, we're going to talk about that today. And then we will use temporal pricing, for example. Different price depending on when you buy the product. So suppose that Taylor Swift has a new album, right? And we're going to sell it in a CD, like the old times. We sell the CD at higher price at the beginning for those super fans, and then in 3 months we lower the price. You never know if the price will go down, but those who want to have the album now, we're not doing that. That's intertemporal price discrimination. Okay. Then there's also banding and time. This we'll talk about. It's kind of interesting. It's basically if I have like 2 products that are related, I could sell you the products separately, rather than selling the products together as a bundle. Okay? And that bundle will have a discount associated with it. So when would I want to do that? It's called economics of bundling. Okay, and in time it's similar. That's when you have related products that are tied together, like the printer and the ink cartridges for printer, and then how the pricing work when you have type products. Okay, basically complements. That's in chapter 11. The more information you have, and the more instruments you have for price discrimination, the more profits you have. Okay, so how do we sell this book? Well, you also have to consider if there's other IO books in the market, right? And what strategies we're going to use. So maybe we want to just do uniform pricing to commit to a high price and soften competition with competitors. Okay? So this stuff can also it gets even more complicated. You start having the price discrimination, different types, and oligopoly. Right? And we're not going to go too much in depth into that. We're going to start with monopoly price discrimination because we don't have time to do everything. Okay, but we're going to talk a little bit about what will happen if you have price discrimination and oligopoly. Okay, and what types of tools you could use to analyze that. Okay, but let's start with the basics. Okay, so maybe what we want to know when we study price discrimination, we want to know the effects on the perfect competition. Right, so this is what's going to happen to prices and quantities, and the impact on work. Is it better or cheaper? Is it better or worse to have price discrimination? I mean, generally, if the word discrimination has a bad reputation, but in economics, discrimination in pricing sometimes can have positive effects. Basically, it allows you to include groups. For example, suppose you have like a movie theater, right? You have a movie theater and a new movie comes out. You know you're not going to fit the whole theater at one price. you may want to provide discounts for children or for senior citizens or retirees, right? People who maybe will go to a theater if the price is lower, but not if the price is higher, and then you can sell at the regular price to people who don't have any, are not children and are not old people, and then those people will come anyway, whether you lower the price or not, and then you also lower the price for the ones for any specific groups. Okay? And it's better for everyone because
you're offering the service, so your cost is already established.
And this way you fill the theater and the pensioners get to come to the theater. Well, I guess in the US, pensioners, this story is told from the US perspective, but the pensioners are like relatively low income and more price sensitive. In Spain, the average pension is higher than the other side.
Yeah.
So here the pensioners really like the low elasticity group that always goes in the theater. Okay. But I digress. Okay. Always you have to take into account the local context. Okay? Like. Okay, so what do we want to learn from chapter 8? We need to be able to distinguish between the three types of price discrimination. See how personalized and group pricing allows monopolies to extract more consumer surplus and thereby to increase profits. Understand how to set different prices for different groups. And understand that in oligopoly settings, the positive surplus extraction effect of price discrimination may be outweighed by a negative competition enhancing effect. Okay, so these are pretty straightforward. We're going to see like what are the three types of price discrimination, which we've already mentioned. How would monopolies use price discrimination to increase profits, and how would they set prices if you have group pricing? Okay, this is going to be super simple. And then this one, we're just going to mention this and look a little bit how this will work. But basically, just know that in oligopoly is not always good for the oligopolies to price discriminate. Because sometimes if they have more information, the competition actually gets more intense and they start competing more intensely for the same customers that otherwise they wouldn't compete for. It can actually reduce their profits. Okay, so we'll see what that's about. Okay, so an important thing is that for price discrimination to occur, there has to be no arbitrage. Okay, imagine that I have like the US version of the book and the European version of the book, right? And the European version is like half the price of the US version. Right? One is 100, one is 50, as I say. If I'm in the US, I could just buy the European version. The transportation costs, the arbitrage costs are zero, right? So, or I could, as a European, buy
50 bucks instead of
or as a Latin American, I could buy the European version. Right, that's more I could buy the European version and for free send it to someone in the US and charge them, I don't know, $20, right? Plus the price that I paid, and then I make $20, right? And they save $30. Bucks is the American currency, dollars. You see what I mean? So basically price discrimination doesn't work, and then the company that can, their whole scheme of price discrimination between Europe and the US doesn't work, okay, because there's arbitrage. So the consumers have to find it impossible or too costly to do arbitrage. Also, it's not like if I have the movie theater, right, and I'm like, okay, there's like tickets for kids, right, at a lower price, at a discounted price. Imagine you go to a museum and you're like, okay, give me, I don't know, it's like I bring some pensioners to buy the tickets at the museum and then give them to me at a lower price. Like, they can't do that, you know, it's the guys who could see it, but I think what I'm doing, it's too embarrassing. I can't come like with with an old lady to a museum and have her like buy the tickets from me at a lower price, and then like she sells them to me and I give like €1 extra, you know. This doesn't work. So there's no arbitrage. It's too costly. It's just too embarrassing to do this. You have to bring the old lady. Or I have to like put a costume on and pretend that I'm an old lady. You know? It's just like no one's gonna do it. Okay, so basically there have to be these barriers to arbitrage. So that was it. Okay, and it can be either physical arbitrage, okay, transfer the good itself to the consumer, or personal arbitrage, which is transfer of demand between different packages in the different consumer. That's chapter 9. Okay. So when we talk about menu pricing, there are different menus. Actually, I should have. I don't do videos, but like I could have shown like there's this super funny scene from a nice little Ricky Gervais, the comedian. He had like this TV show. I don't know which thing. I didn't watch it, but I saw like this kind of scene, in which he goes with a kid to a diner. You know, a diner, like this kind of like restaurants and something in the US.
Yes.
So he was. I think he's in the UK, but it's some sort of like diner type restaurant. So he's like, I don't know, it's like his nephew or something. He's with this kid in the diner, and he's like, we'll have 2 kids menus. And the waitress is like, you can't have 2 kids menus. You know what I mean? He's like, I'm just not that hungry. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, but that was for kids. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I just want a kid-sized meal. That's really not. You can't do that. You could do it if you like. It's just for kids. Like it's menu. It's not just a smaller menu, and anyone can do it. So you cannot like pretend that you're a kid and get the kids menu. In some places, maybe they don't care, you know. But in general, the idea is that it's not for you, right? Just like Taylor Swift music, it's for children. I mean, it's not for you. But you're allowed to listen to it. Yeah.
But is that legal? Like, is it legal to say to a client, no, I cannot give you the children's menu because you are not a child?
I mean, it's a good question.
It happened to me once, and I was like, okay, I leave the restaurant.
Did they give you the kids
No, I
menu?
was in Italy. And I asked for the kids menu because I preferred the kids menu, and he said, no,
This menu is great.
yes, it's great, and sometimes you want it, and it's cheaper, so it's perfect. And I was like, and he told me, no, you are not younger than 14 years old. I was like,
And they did
that's
it.
what you think.
You
No,
were
but-
offended, yeah.
And I left because I think it's absurd to not.
I don't know if it's legal, but it's a great question. I mean, for practical purposes, it's customary not to give it to adults. I mean, then what the guy was doing is that he was like, okay, he'll have 2. And the joke was that like, he ordered 2 for the kid. He's like, no, therefore it's for him. And then like when she wasn't looking, he was in like
It's absurd.
the kids thing. Okay, go with personal language. Okay, so typology of price discrimination. We have personalized pricing, sometimes called perfect price discrimination, or first degree price discrimination. This means I literally have a different price for each person, and in theory, usually the way this is done is you actually assume that you can charge each person their reservation price. Okay? This is like an ideal situation for the monopolist. Okay, it never exists exactly in this way. I mean, I don't think there's any example of first degree price discrimination exactly as in the textbook. But there is personalized pricing, you know. Like if you go to like I don't know, like an Arab market or something, you know, you have to bargain for each thing, and the guy's gonna try to see, you know, how much you're willing to pay.
But an auction, like an
I'm
auction.
talking about informal, like kind of like sort of street market.
And then auction wouldn't it be like an example of first degree discrimination?
An auction, no, not really, because an auction, the difference between this and an auction is that this here you can sell like a large number of units, you know, like you have a demand function and you're going to sell each customer. In the auction, you have only one item.
Okay. And it's one
Maybe two
customer.
items. But in the auction, you have one item.
Not necessarily, because for the market of watches, I know people who have like their store and they sell everything on auction with a base price that covers all of their cost. And everything is on auction. There's
They
websites.
bargain the price with the people.
Yeah.
When they go to the
Yeah.
store. So yeah, some stores you may have to bargain. Like
And it's online, right?
normal to go to a store and bargain.
No, but all this is online.
In the Middle East, in some places you have to bargain. I don't know if in Kenya people bargain. You go to a store. In Brazil, it's also people sometimes just to bargain. You know, so here you go to a store in bargain and you look at it like that. No. We don't do that. It's, this is.
Come at night.
This is more expensive. You know what I mean? You could bargain, basically. I don't know, also recording this and be like, hey, you know, this is a nice suit, but and it says
I'll give
300.
you
But,
$20.
you know, I give you 200.
That is. $10.
Okay, so personalized pricing. Individualized price for each unit purchased by each buyer for surface extraction. Nice thing about personalized pricing, it's 100% efficient. It reaches the competitive quantity. The only difference is that in competition, the consumers get a large amount of surplus, and here they get zero surplus. The monopolist extracts all the surplus from the consumers. Group pricing is called third degree price discrimination, which is when you go to a movie theater and unfairly senior citizens get a lower price than you. Okay. That's group pricing. Basically, price based on your group. Like your own, you can show your pension card. You get a lower price at the bus, for example, in public. Or if you're a kid, you get a price of zero. But you still have to. My oldest daughter, who's 5, now has to have a card to ride the bus. And she pays zero, but she has to have a card. Before she didn't even have to have a card. Now they need to like swipe the card. Technically, they have to. I'm sure they wouldn't care. But at some when you are 5, now you have to swipe the card in the bus. And your price is zero. Then when you're an adult, but a student, maybe your price is going to be like some reduced price. Then once you're not a student anymore, you have to pay the full price. And then when you retire, you get a lower price again. Okay, that's group pricing. That's the canonical group pricing example. Okay, segmentation based on indicators related to consumers' preferences, different prices per group. Questions? Less are always on your fancy laptops, your Huawei's and your Macs. But that's okay. I mean, if it works for you.
Is this class gonna be online?
I think that usually the empirical evidence suggests that like having your electronics in class leads to worse learning outcomes. I'm gonna put that here as just like an attempt, just like for your information. FYI. It's not recommended to have your laptop in class. And you also live longer if you write things by hand instead of the computer. I know for
There has been no time yet to study that. There has been no time yet to study that.
So your generation will suffer a lot.
We're not going to live because of electronic devices and because we're not going to have pensions. We have like the worst deck ever since before the Industrial Revolution.
Like the boomers, that's not my fault. I mean, they screwed us too. But they screwed you even more. But it's okay, each generation has its own challenges. And we have to figure out. You know, we also have some advantages relative to older generations. Not everything is worse. Most things are.
But I guess we
No,
can
no.
find one.
Yeah. I mean, our most good. It's not like everything's going great. But it's up to you to figure out. Yeah. Yes, other generations mess things up. And they were selfish. And they could have had like a more kind of more conservative kind of view, you know, like conservative institutions of society from the beginning, right? But they were very conservative. The conservative wasn't like cool in the 90s, and now the institutions, you know, are afraid. And now the young people now are more conservative. Because they realize, okay, we need to go back to like our grandparents kind of things and like bring that back, you know, because like the chain of going from one generation to the other and carrying social institutions and the traditions and all that stuff kind of broke with the postmodernist relations. I don't know. I mean, there's many things going on. I'm thinking one thing. The culture hasn't passed down generation to generation as much as it should have. Has it? I don't know, maybe I'm exaggerating. And maybe it's not as important as what we're thinking. But I'm very conservative. I've realized that
You're not.
I'm a very conservative person. I would say that I have a fear that like social institutions and the social fabric, people that are not concerned enough with like conserving the things that from the past. Most people don't care. I don't know, maybe you shouldn't care. I mean, maybe it's just like weird to care about this stuff. And I even think I was a conservative like 10 years ago. But now I realize I've always been a conservative. I know, I'm not libertarian, I'm not leftist, I'm a conservative. And I don't know. I've learned that about myself, but you guys don't have to be conservatives. I don't even know if I'm a conservative. I care about conservation of society. You know Edmund Burke? You guys study Burke?
Working?
Burke? Not Burka.
No.
No? We studied this like in first year of college and in history class.
I don't know who he is.
This novel studied. See, this is what I'm worried about. You don't necessarily even know Edmund Burke. Anyway, look it up. Not in my time, because otherwise I start talking about Edmund Burke instead of what I'm supposed to talk about. And that's part of the problem. Okay, so group pricing is different price for different groups. Menu pricing is I offer a menu, I offer a kids menu and a senior menu, and you're allowed to choose the kids menu, but you're going to choose not to because you're an adult and you want to eat more, right? That's menu pricing. It's like I offer different choices with different prices, and I hope that the consumers are going to pick the choice that they wanted to. Okay, so here you would be allowed to get the kids menu, but you don't, because even though it's cheaper, it's also a smaller portion. Okay, that's self-selection. Okay, so here the keyword in menu pricing is self-selection. Okay, the menu could be food, could be like the kids menu and the I mean, I could also do like, if you go to like the Sideria, Pilpil, they could have like the menu Sideria or the menu Pilpil, right? One is more expensive than the other, and depends, you know, if it's a very special occasion, the menu Sideria, if it's a more normal thing, the menu Pilpil. I don't know, right? And one of them is like 4 euros and one is like 60 euros, right? And there used to be this restaurant, Peruvian, Japanese, Nikkei food, called Mixtura. Unfortunately, it closed. You know this place, Mixtura? They closed recently, maybe they closed before. No, yeah, it's in Guardia. Amazing place. And basically it was Nikkei cuisine, which was, Nikkei are like the Japanese people that live in Peru. Okay? I think not everybody knows this, you know this. There's a lot of Japanese people in Peru. And those people are called Nikkei, like the stock market. Index. And they have a particular type of cuisine that's like a mixture of like Japanese and Peruvian cuisines. And there was a restaurant of this type in Pamplona, in a very beautiful place, fancy, and the outskirts of the city. And they have two menus. They have like the regular menu and the tasting menu, right? Which was like a 6-course, like it would like a 6 kind of like Michelin type, you know, trying to be very fancy and more avant-garde. Okay. I don't know which one's better. I've only tried the tasting menu because we only went there twice. We go there when my family is visiting like from the US and we go there. It's very close. And every time we go there, like, wow, this is so amazing, you know, how can I like, this is like incredible level of food, right? And so when we wanted to impress our like relatives and treat them well, when they came from abroad, we went to like this place and we got like the fancy menu with 6%. Actually, we told them, what do you want to do? Actually, it's like my brother-in-law came, right? And sister-in-law, and for me, I would have had like the regular menu, but it wasn't like, hey, what do you want to do? You know, we're here in Pamplona, it's not only here like all the time. Let's just do it, you know. They're fancy people. They like it's an experience for them. It's in Arkansas. There are so many restaurants that are like this style, with 6 different plates of fusions. I don't know. It was special for them. They just went for it. I guess if you spend the money to get the ticket to your Arkansas to here, you might spend like 10 more euros and get the special one when you go to the restaurant, right? But if you go like for the people who work near there, and if they go. They wouldn't probably go every day to that restaurant, but maybe they go on a Friday to consider something, maybe they will get the most special menu. You see what I mean? That's called menu pricing. All the examples I'm giving you of menu pricing are from actual menus, from food. But actually menu pricing applies to a lot of things. Right? For example, anything, phones. Right? When you go to the phone store, you go to MediaMarkt or whatever, or Amazon, online, you want to use the phone, Samsung is going to have not one type of phone, but okay, here's a Samsung, right? They're going to give you a menu of phones, right? And which one you get is a function of your willingness to pay for quality, right? You're going to have different people with the distribution, willingness to pay for quality. And also willing to pay a lot for quality, I'm going to get the fancy. I don't even know what it's called. Okay. This one they give me like yes. So my other employer, well, it's the University of Navarra. I'm also affiliated with the business school in Barcelona, and every few years they're like, okay, like here's a phone, and because you don't care, you just get the basic one. Like, I'll give you the free one. Because they have a bunch of phones and they do everyone like the compact phone. Okay, so I don't even get my phone because I don't my personal life is not so interesting that I feel like I would have to have another phone that like, my work kind of monitor. And other people get their own phones too. You know, I don't really sure.
So the difference between third degree and second degree is that the third degree, the monopoly chooses the price per group, and in second degree, it's a self-selection, is the distinction, right? It's the consumer the one that's going to self-select its price. rather than the monopolies. The monopolies just offers bundles, no menu.
Exactly. This isn't really price discrimination, right? The menu pricing. It's more like I offer a variety of products with different prices and different qualities, and the customer chooses the product. You know, it's just pricing. It's product differentiation, but it's considered a form of price discrimination. Okay, it's just like you go to the airline and you can get like and you have different qualities of seats, right? You have like the economy plus, business, first class, what else? Comfort, economy, comfort plus, or something. They have different categories, but it used to be like economy, business, first class, right? And different customers are going to choose different seats, right? The vast majority of people choose economy because the hours are super expensive. In a way, they actually make it's a much more complicated kind of scheme because in the end, the people who get the business class usually is because they get like miles and every once in a while they upgrade to business with the miles or something like that, right? Or first class. It's like, who buys first class tickets? So imagine if you have to go, I don't know, to Australia and like you would nice to go in first class, but then it's like, okay, the regular ticket to Australia is like 1,500 euros, and then the business class is 3,000, and then the first class is like 10,000. The price difference are huge. But that's why flying first class, you know, has this connotation of being so wealthy that the marginal utility of money, if you offer margin of euro, you do have margin of euros close to zero, and you're like, okay, whatever, 10,000, right? Because I want you to come here, right? When I go to Australia.
The people that are very wealthy, their willingness to pay curve is like the opposite, because the higher the price, perhaps the more they feel they want like that, like they are they want to buy it because they feel it's
Yeah, that's called that. Yeah, you know that's sometimes you know. You think, okay, demand curves could slow upwards, right? Because you think, okay, the more, it could be, I think it could be some ways. Very interesting to think about this, but that's called the Veblen effect. Okay, which is, if something's more exclusive, I'm willing to pay more for it than if it's not. Okay, and in the luxury industry, it's something that is real. Okay? Now that doesn't mean that my demand curve doesn't stop downward necessarily, although it could if the effect is very extreme. But that's a different thing. Okay? In principle, in general, wealthy people have a higher willingness to pay. And the willingness to pay may also be a function of how exclusive the product seems to be. So if you're like Louis Vuitton and suddenly you start closing too many handbags of Louis Vuitton, and the product starts being perceived as not as exclusive as it used to be, people's willingness to pay for it would actually change endogenously. You see what I mean? Because you kind of overproduce. So people who produce luxury stuff always kind of like, I don't want to produce too many of these because then the price will go down, and in the long run, my product will start being seen as like not as special. Right? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, and also like I feel there are people that no matter what, they are always gonna go for the expensive option. Like I mean, not a lot of people, but you know what I mean? Like,
I mean, there's some people.
like no, let's take the most expensive. No, the most expensive.
I mean, yes, but except for the words no matter what, because at some point I'm gonna raise the price so much that I'm gonna like.
Yeah.
No matter
But
what.
in general,
Usually,
you have so much money.
Yeah, usually those type of people, because they relate higher pricing with better quality.
Eso. Like
And
you
they say, okay,
No,
it has to be the best.
Yes, and
Maybe
that's
it's,
now. So it would be nice to do a monologue, right? And I wonder if the book has there's a few chapters that will speak, but sometimes the price can be similar to the right? And the consumers, when you have asymmetric information, it could be interesting to write a model in which a higher price puts in a higher quality. But quality is not a limit, right? Because at some point, the willingness to pay for quality is not unbounded, right? So at some point, you raise the price so much that I'm like, well, even if it may be seen as a quality is amazing, I'm still not going to buy it, even if I'm very wealthy. At some point, so
Yeah.
remember charge me €1 million to fly first class. I mean, like, oh, it's so expensive. I'm gonna pay €1 million because this flight, nobody else is gonna be there. For that price, I know. I'll get my own private jet subscription from NetJets or something. I mean, that's the thing. Again, they also have competitors that are even more exclusive. But at some point, once this, I mean, there are people who work in I'm not in marketing, right? Obviously. But some people work in marketing, right? And they really focus on these things. This is really interesting British guy. I don't know if you know heard about this guy. Rory Sutherland. Okay, and he talks about this and then he's like, okay, people who like to sell like very expensive cars, people who do that for a living, like Rolls Royce, they don't sell the cars like a car store. They go and sell it like in a place where they sell airplanes, right? Where they sell like private jets. As you said, Rolls Royce, I think also manufactures like jets or jet engines. So they go and they also have like a car that's like €200,000 next to a jet, and maybe that person, he says maybe the person doesn't buy a jet that day, but he's like, okay, or you buy a jet for like, I don't know, how much is it? It's like maybe 10 million. And then you're like, okay, since we're at it, let's just get the €200,000 car, right? If you were looking for cars, so you never get the €200,000 car, right? And it's like, since we're spending with jets, and I realize, and I remember how wealthy I am, and I can buy the jets, then I'll just get like for like 2% more, I'll just get this car because I like it in the soil of the jet, right? I don't have time to go to a car, so I'm like, okay, yeah, give me like the €200,000 car. So, yeah, there's all sorts of like marketing tricks and psychological stuff that people like who work in marketing can do. This is more like the economics. Okay, here's not about like behavioral stuff so much. Okay? This is more about like strategic pricing and volume choices. Okay? And just like a very, very basic categorization is the different types of price discrimination. Okay? So you need to know this, and this is internet. Personalized pricing is different price for each person. Group pricing is kind of a less extreme version of that, where you have a different price for each group. Menu pricing is when you offer different options, hoping that people will self-select and buy the option that's different options and different prices, and we're going to increase profits by having a bigger range. Okay? Example, airlines, like we were saying. Okay, airlines will it's a favorable context for price discrimination. Okay? Consumers are very heterogeneous. There's limited arbitrage opportunities because you have to buy a ticket for yourself and you can't give it to somebody else. And the marginal cost, the physical marginal cost is very low. Okay, up to capacity. So you basically have like so we need some planes to this route and they have to fill up the planes. Okay, so think of the airlines as a plane like a two-stage lane. First, or a three-stage lane. First they decide to enter a route. Okay? Recently Pamplona, the Pamplona government auctioned some slots in the airport to see if some airlines would be interested in offering flights, for example, to Germany or to London or to Italy from Pamplona, and nobody showed up.
Really?
So nobody's interested in providing flights in Pamplona. So we have basically like I guess the mandatory flight to Madrid and to the Canary Islands, and that's it. I mean, other airports in some other cities, you know, the government pays the airlines per passenger every day. Okay, so Pamplona doesn't really offer that much. Welcome to Pamplona. We start here. Okay? So basically, first, airlines play a three-stage game. First, they have to decide to enter a route. Then they have to decide how much capacity to commit to a route. Okay, so they have to go to airplanes and put them in those airports and have them flying back and forth. And then they have to choose the pricing in order to fill the planes. Right? And to fill the planes, they use price discrimination. Because first, they have different categories of seats for different people. So that people self-select into different qualities. Okay? Business versus economy. The main tells you the opposite. The airline is considered as there's like heterogeneity and different willingness to pay between like people who are like business people and people who are tourists, right? Economy in Spanish is called tourists. The tourists usually are much more price sensitive and they look for like deals. And they don't need to be so comfortable because they don't have to like wear suits and they don't have to plane, so they can be like wearing like joggings. And they're just gonna be there for a couple hours and then they're like beach and out. But the business people have to be like they kind of sweaty, they have to be no problem. At least they used to. Now that society is growing and all these things, people are like less problem. They used to have to wear a tie, right? Yeah, now even Goldman Sachs doesn't even require that. I'm fuming. This is an outrage. Goldman Sachs recently revised the dress code so that you don't have to wear a suit. You can just be like business casual. This was like a few years ago, like around COVID. I think in the US still the dress code is more formal than in Spain. It makes sense. It's a colder country. If you're in California, it's not as formal. Because it's warm in Hawaii.
Lucky.
I mean, I don't want to travel at all. My willingness to pay for travel is negative. Okay, so basically what do? They do price discrimination based on this kind of self-selection into different business classes in order to fill the plane, right, at different price points. They also do intertemporal price discrimination. It's like if they see that the plane is not getting filled up at the end, they offer discount until they fill up the plane. And then now, it used to be that the planes used to be sometimes empty. These days, they do, because it's online, they do so many things and they eventually get to fill up every single plane. Every time it's like, welcome, this is a full flight to Amazon. Right? And we never do like, it used to be like 15 years ago. I would be like, sometimes I'm sleeping in half of the flights. Like, so we get like 3 seats on the empty. Yeah, the place used to be like much more, but now they've got much better price discrimination and filling up the planes. Much more efficient. Okay? And then there's also restrictions based on observable characteristics, like low pricing, because you also need a lower price for the kids, right? And students. Students pay lower price on plane tickets? Maybe not.
Depends. For example, in Spain, no, but in international flights, there may be something added, but they get pretty much the normal fare with something more.
They pay more?
No, for example, for China, if you're a student in China, you can get like the flight at the same price, but for example, you can carry one extra luggage and you can get like one more thing, but price is the same, you get a little bit more.
Right. And then, yes, on top of that, on top of having discounts for kids, they also now charge you extras for the luggage and this kind of stuff. Right? So there's all sorts of things going on. Airline pricing is really fascinating. Okay, so, group pricing. Suppose you have a demand function that comes from the fact that the evaluation for a product is distributed uniformly over the 0-1 interval. Okay? And suppose that you can observe the following. You can perfectly observe from this customer the theta, the willingness to pay, but you can observe, you can separate two groups. You can separate the group that's above 1/2 and the group that's below 1/2. Okay, so you can divide the interval into two. Okay, now you can do group pricing. Okay, so you do one price for the ones that are below 1/2, this, and then one price for those that have willingness to pay above 1/2, which are the ones that are here. Okay, and that gives you, if you just solve it's like two separate monopoly problems. One of them gives you a price of 1/2 for the ones that have willingness to pay between 1/2 and 1, and the price of 1/4 for the ones that have willingness to pay between 0 and 1/2. Okay? The uniform price policy would have been price equal to 1/2. Okay, it's just a monopoly with linear demand. Okay. The uniform will distribute consumers basically give you a linear demand, P equal 1 minus Q. Okay, Q equal 1 minus P, and the inverse demand, P equal 1 minus Q. Without the monopoly problem, the price is equal to 1 minus the quantity. The profits equal to 1 minus the quantity, assuming zero marginal cost times the quantity. Okay, then the cost of commission will be 1 minus Q plus 0 of Q monopoly with uniform pricing. That's what we do. That's one. Okay, if I divide it into two, I'm going to have the same one, but only up to 1/2. Let's say we're having this. I'm going to separate this demand function, P, and 1 plus Q. I'm going to separate it into two. I'm going to have this part, 1/2, and then I'm going to have this part. Okay, I'm segmenting the market into two. These are the units to pay about 1/2, and these are, which is this, and these are the units to pay below 1/2. For this, the marginal revenue is going to be here, and marginal revenue equal marginal cost when the quantity is 1/2, and then the price is going to be 1/2. And then the price for this, the marginal revenue is here, is going to cross marginal cost at 1/4, and we have price equals the group 1 and group 2. Okay? And so I'm going to sell to group 1 at the price of 1/2, and they're going to buy 1/2. The profits are going to be equal to price times quantity, or 1/2 times 1/2, which is equal to 1/4. Profits from group 1. And the profits from group 2 are going to be equal to this. P2 times P2 equals 1/4 times 1/4, which is equal to 1/16. The profits here in uniform pricing are equal to the uniform times Q uniform, this is P1 minus P1. And the uniform times uniform is 1/2 times 1/2 equals 1. Okay. My total profits here are 1/4 plus 1/16, which is with discrimination, with low pricing scheme, IG is equal to 9/16, greater than 1/4. Okay, so the company is making higher profits because it can price discriminate, it can segment the consumers that have high willingness to pay, more than 1/2, from the consumers that have low willingness to pay. Let's see. Okay. And what are the consumers? Are they worse off? So companies making more money, but the consumers aren't worse off, right? Because the consumers that have a wide high willingness to pay are the ones that will go to buy here, right? In the uniform pricing list. That's what the pricing is. P or XQ. Market revenue, we work here as a half, and the price will be in half. So we pay the same as these consumers here that are going to be buying. So it's the high willingness to pay consumers that are going to be buying in the uniform pricing case. They're going to pay a price of 1/2, which is the same as they would pay in the price discrimination case. And the low willingness to pay consumers, or the consumer surplus of 0 here, because they're excluded from the market. The price of 1/2 is higher than the willingness to pay. Whereas here, they get consumer surplus, right? Because the price is going to be here, this square here are profits, and this triangle here is consumer surplus. Group 2. And this is the consumer surplus. Group 1, which is the same as before. See what I mean? So price discrimination here makes no one worse off, and makes the consumers, the low willingness to pay consumers better off. The old ladies going to a movie theater, or the kids pay the kids better, but that's if you can actually force the kids. This would be the case if you could force the kids, the adults, not to buy the kids. Right? Like in the future days. Things or like it happened to McDonald's. Okay, so now the adults are better off. Otherwise, the adults will be going to a restaurant and the kids, the willingness to pay to get a kid food, I guess. That's not really no, I guess what. That's not the best example. The best example here would be like the movie theater. Well, I was thinking like if there were no kids menu, what would happen is if there were no kids menu, what would happen is that the adults would share some of their food with the kids, but they wouldn't be willing to buy like a whole thing for the kids. Right?
The profit of the groups is 1/4 plus 1/16.
Yes.
It's 5/16.
The profit of is 5/1 plus 5/2.
It's 5/16. No?
It's 8/16 plus 1/16.
8, but it's 1/4, no 1.
Oh, you're right. Right. My bad. It's 1/4, 5/16. Still higher. Still higher.
How do, then how in reality companies analyze the willingness to pay for service? How do they know people are willing to pay this
How do
amount?
people, how do companies know the willingness to pay?
Yes.
How does the movie theater know supposed to charge like 10 euros to you and only 7 to the Italians?
I'm trying.
We kind of discussed this when we talk about demand and how do the companies know the demand. There's 3 possible answers to that question. We said 2. first possible answer would be probably like, I don't know, I imagine this is for like what Marcus Kinatere would say. He would say like, no, not my problem, I'm a theorist. We're just thinking of like the theoretical properties of this kind of stuff. Second possible answer, they have data and they estimate the demand, right? And the demand gives you the distribution of the units to pay. Okay? Using econometric techniques to estimate demand and discussed like in the first class. There's more techniques actually. I would have discussed some of those techniques last class, but let's go into the process. And then the third is just a long one expertise by being in the industry for a long time and just know within months.
I mean, what if it's something new though? Because, for instance, I wonder, like, of movies, right? You can see other competitors and stuff. So with these AI subscriptions, for instance, the first one that came out, how do they know they could charge $30 a month for this instead of 100 or 1,000? Because that's, you don't have a reference at that point, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that it's like suppose you have like a new product and you come up with ChatGPT,
Yeah.
right? And you're like, okay, and now we need to monetize ChatGPT.
But you do valuation by comparables, right? I mean, you choose like the willingness to pay of people for services that are not necessarily exactly like your product, but that could offer the same ease in your life as your product.
Yeah, you have to start thinking outside the box in that case. And there's no formula for that. And new products can fail all the time. And some of it's going to be like trial and error, right? And then we're going to try to figure it out as we on the go, right? First, they look at the pricing. How stable is the pricing for AI subscriptions? It's been varying like crazy. And they've been offering like lots of different plans to try to get. We're trying to get information on how much people are willing to pay by changing these things and seeing like how the market responds. And the competition is evolving all the time until this is going to settle, and at some point it's like everybody knows that you pay €8 for Netflix and the price of Netflix is something correct. And at the beginning, it wasn't so obvious that the question, right? And everybody's going to know that everybody has to pay for like, I don't know, €40 to Orange for internet, and then you also pay €20 to Grok for AI services, and it's just part of your utilities, right? And that's what you pay, and that's it. And it's becoming more established market.
Also for this stuff,
But at this point, you don't really know. You have to get a bunch of smart people in the room and kind of like have them, or you get like some focus group and like how much you willing to pay for this. I don't know, you have to start thinking outside the box and doing more like more intelligent things, because you don't have a say that you tell you what is it, right?
Also for this, like, I know, like, for instance, Netflix, right? They have to charge more depending on the regulations of each country. That's why I know, like, some services are more expensive in countries. That's why people do the VPN stuff, where they have subscription in countries where it's cheaper than Netherlands. Like, that kind of forces prices could be paid. And you have some stuff. This is like iPhone. iPhone is way more expensive here than in the States. Like way more.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a good question. How do you do it for new products? Definitely, you're not going to have data. It's going to have to be based more on intuition, one on comparing to the most similar products to this new product, and trying to think if your product is providing more or less value than those products that already exist. Right? But there is you're going to have to go through a process of discovering what's the price for a new product. Okay? Well, isn't this kind of amazing? Because we discriminate in the consumers, and yet it's a Pareto improvement, right? It sounds like it would be bad for the consumers if we discriminate them. At least it would sound like it would be bad for the high willingness to pay consumers, right? Because you think, well, we're gonna charge them more so that we can charge the other price, right? And in this case, at least in this example, you said it's always going to be like this. In this example, you actually charge them the same, and then the price discrimination allows you to to also have a low price for low HP consumers.
The squares here was a profit. This
Square is
here-
profits.
Okay.
Okay, these are profits.
But in this case, the damage to okay.
This is 1/4, this is 1/16. Alright, now what happens if you can price discriminate?
The reason why you put a vertical on Q1/2 is because
I mean, I'm slicing this in half, remember?
yeah,
I'm taking these guys, and this is now like
yeah,
one market, and this is a separate
exactly.
market.
That was my question. So
So this
technically,
market, this market stops here because I can separate the high
Yeah.
willingness to pay from the low willingness to pay.
so technically, what is at the right of the group one, it's not at the weight loss because the only dead weight loss you have it on the group two because the group two is capturing part of the.
Exactly. Now there's no dead weight loss here. There's
Exactly.
only dead weight loss here. Before all of this was dead weight loss.
Okay.
So basically, it's making everyone better off, and there's no magic. It's just because we're reducing dead weight loss. We're reducing inefficiency.
So it's better for the rich people.
It's the same for the rich people. Actually, the ones that are benefiting, the ones that are benefiting the most. And that's why rich people will be the owners of the monopoly. But it's
I was thinking about the people who had like a higher bonus.
it's the same for the high rich people. People it's the same. The price is the same. So it's the same for them. It's better for the low income to pay people. Arguably. So prices are just better for the poor. I mean, you would think that intuitively. Then maybe there are examples where actually the price for the high income to pay goes up. Here, in this linear example, it remains the same. But you would think, okay, if I can discriminate consumers, who am I going to charge more to? If I can separate consumers into groups, I'm going to charge more to the high willingness to pay, right? So if price discrimination is bad for anyone, it's going to tend to be bad for wealthier people. At least in this case of like consumers. So if we're thinking about workers, it could be the other way around. Well, in different contexts, it's going to be different. I could imagine some cases. I mean, if we think of things like the movie theater or food, I'm going to tend to charge more to the people if I can price discriminate. But in this case, you know, right? So maybe you do, maybe you don't. But in general, it's not like I'm going to use that to charge more to poor people. There may be some cases in which I will charge more to poor. For example, if my product were banking services. Right, because in that case I would be discriminating based on the probability so they're defaulting. If I'm controlling for the product of default, I already will charge more. I'm saying I would do this, it's not very careless. I'm a banker and I'm going to explain because they can't pay. I'm not a banker. And if the banks do this, it's like, yes, they have to charge people more, but I'm more likely to do that. I mean, imagine if the government went and forced the banks to charge the same interest rate for the loan, irrespective of your product of default. Sounds like a good idea, right? It's more fair.
There's a lot of like moral hazard in like those collection problems, right? Because like people who, it's like with insurance, it's like people who know they're gonna default are gonna ask for loans for a very like a lower interest rate than they should. Actually, it's an incentive to default.
It gives you an incentive to default more. I mean, now it's like, and the banks would have to raise the interest rates for everyone.
And everyone would pay.
And then the people that wouldn't default will be much less likely to do loan. Right? And that would make banks charge even higher interest rates. Right? This is the
Market for them. It's so similar to the market for
same
them.
market for them. Actually, there's a classic paper that is by Stiglitz and Rice. I think Stiglitz's mosaic paper. This and that. If you care about like asymmetric information in the trade market, classic paper, Stiglitz, and what's like 1980 or something, around. I don't remember the year, but it's a very old. It's like from the time of the market for lemons, Stiglitz got the Nobel Prize together with Ackermann, who was the author of the
That's
market
the
for
one.
lemons. And Stiglitz got it for this kind of stuff, which was like the market for lemons for the financial markets.
So are the ones like more silver, Stiglitz of the United States?
No, Stiglitz was also theory.
That one is here too.
It's called pure theory. It's pure theory that, you know, these top theories like Stiglitz and Akerlof, they were involved in like real world stuff, you know, and thinking about these issues and trying to capture like the essence of this very interesting information economics that was going on with this like stylized, very elegant frameworks. It's beautiful theory, that's why everyone knows. Even on dense Stiglitz, you know, I don't even want to get into this, like, reading and stuff. In practice, you know, he wasn't very good at policy and stuff, especially in Argentina. I don't really get this. So don't listen to economists just because they make an advice, or because they're regular theory. Right? There was an economist called Joan Robinson. Have you guys heard of Joan Robinson? She said the reason to study economics is to she said it in that way. The reason to study economics is to avoid being fooled by economists. So you study economics so that you know the things that are done and why they're wrong. Okay, John Robinson was like the advisor of Alan Manning, who presented here last year. And Alan Manning was the advisor of Mike Walther, Joanna Manescu. And she developed, Joanna Manescu was like one of my authors. We developed like the field, like, well, they were more like empirics of like competition in real markets, and I developed some in real markets. And then she became the chief economist of the DOJ and changed all the guidelines to include like workers in the other interest rates. But we need to first get to price estimation so that we can get triangle adjustment. Okay, now John Robinson.
The Department of Justice, you say DOJ?
Yeah, John. Anyway. Okay, so what happens if you start partitioning the unit line into more and more segments? Right, so you have the one line, you have the display, and now suddenly you have more and more information. Right? How do we quantify this idea of the more and more information in this context where we're looking at? Less information is you don't know the industry of it. Second, you can say, okay, we can divide it into two groups for the industry, right? A equal 2, which is what we just did. You could do A equal 3, right? You will start partitioning into more and more segments that you can observe much more definition for the industry, the more groups I can divide into, right? And if you do this, what you can see is, and you solve for like the profits, the consumer surplus, and the deadweight loss. As the number of groups increases, what happens? The deadweight loss goes to 0 because you go towards personalized pricing again, and basically go to the efficient outcome. But consumer surplus also goes to 0. At the beginning, from 1 to 2 is the special case when consumer surplus increases, but then consumer surplus starts going down. So once you go beyond 2 segments, you actually start charging more to the health consumer. So you start extracting the consumer surplus. So it goes up a little bit, but then it goes back down. Then it goes to 0. And basically profits go to the whole surplus. Okay, the total surplus. Okay, so lesson. That's the lesson. Information about consumers' reservation prices increases. If information increases, then the monopolist increases profits. Under personalized prices, monopolist captures the entire surplus and then the loss vanishes. Okay, at the beginning the consumers are better off, but eventually, if you can start discriminating more and more and more, consumer surplus goes to zero and the consumers are not better. Okay, and here we give these beautiful equations for profits, consumer surplus, and then loss as a function of the number of segments that we can do with consumers. Okay? But we're not going to write those. We're going to keep going.
This doesn't work for menu pricing because in menu pricing you also have different profits within each segment of the menu, right?
This is not for menu pricing.
Exactly.
It's just like this style guys. This is for group pricing. And says you can increase the number of groups, what happens?
You're really individualized.
In which you have the consumers are distributed, the winners to pay is distributed between 0 and 1, and the way you make the end go to infinity is with the partitions of these into more and more segments.
And then you individualize each price, no?
And then you can take it converges to individualized prices as it goes to infinity. Right? As the number of segments, you basically like the segment eventually will have like it will be just you in the limit. Right? Usually the segment is gonna have like measure 1 over n your segment, and then 1 over n the measure of that is gonna go to 0. Right? As n goes to 0. By way of just a technical way of saying that the segments are getting smaller and smaller up to a point where like each segment is going to be just a point. Okay. Here's where it gets interesting. Well, it's already interesting. But then, what if you can now also see, okay, what if you have two firms competing and also gathering information about the consumers? Okay, so then how do we think about it? We think that there's going to be a linear city, and the two firms are going to be first exogenously located at 0 and 1. Okay, and then the firms can invest in information, which means they can segment this into K, into 2 to the K. So they could do like this. And it's exogenous, like how much information they get. It's like they buy information about the consumers. So they could buy, suppose they have like 8 segments, so it could be like something like this. So now they would know is 2 to the 4, well, 8 segments. And now you have information on the location of the different consumers, right? So you know that the consumer is here, but you don't know if the consumer is in this segment, and you know if the consumer is here or here or here or here. Okay, so this is like, from the point of view of the firms now, the location is like a distribution of willingness to pay, because the consumers that are more to this side are more willing to pay for 1, and the consumers that are more to this side are more willing to pay from 0. You see what I mean? Because the willingness to pay is going to be R minus the transportation cost, okay, times X minus the location of the money. This is going to be the willingness to pay of the money. Okay, so the firm can observe where the X is, but with some nodes, right, only within the segment. And then they have to play some sort of game with this factor. So K here is going to measure the quality of information. Okay, and it's going to be equal to 2 to the K, and the higher the K, the better the information is they have about the consumers and their willingness to pay on location. So there's going to be a 3-stage game, which we are not going to solve. You guys are free to run with the book. But honestly, don't do it unless you feel that you have like a lot of free time. So in the first stage, the firms decide whether to acquire information of exogenous polar decay or not. Okay, so the firm decides, am I going to acquire information or not? Then the firms choose their price, and then the firms choose specific prices for the different segments, like discounts for the segments. Okay? Now basically there's maybe 4 sub-layers that we have to consider. We have to consider 4 cases. We have to consider the case in which both firms acquire information, and the 2 firms are able to segment the consumers. We have to consider cases in which neither firm acquires information, and they can't segment the consumers. And we have to consider cases where one firm acquires information and one doesn't. Okay, so you have to solve those cases. None of them is trivial. And if you solve them, what you will get is that basically if the 2 acquire information, then firm 1 is going to be a constrained monopolist for the first 3 segments. Firm 2 is going to be a constrained monopolist for the last 3 segments. So it's going to sell, this firm is going to sell, it's going to be the only one selling to these, right? But it's constrained because it knows that if its price is too high, they will go to firm. Okay? So it's not a free monopolist, as if they were actually no other firms. It knows that there's another firm, and that limits how much it can increase the price. Yeah, and then in the middle segments, firm 2 is going to offer a low price for these consumers, and it's going to allow that, and that's going to allow it to attract some market share of these, even though these are closer to firm 1, and vice versa. Okay? So there's going to be price discrimination, and the firms are going to lower the price in segments 4 and 5. Okay, so here, the information is allowing the firms to segment the consumers and price discriminating and attract more surplus, but it's also increasing the competition for these 2. Okay, for the ones that are further in the middle. The consumers that are in the middle are going to face competition, and that's going to reduce the profits in these segments. Okay, so there's going to be a trade-off. Yes. On one hand, they may want to invest in information. It's good for them if both invest in information because they can price discriminate. But compared to the case in which both of them don't invest in information, it's bad because it makes them compete harder for these 2 segments. Okay, because they know that these consumers are almost willing to switch to this one. And if they lower the price a little bit, they will get. Okay, if only one firm invests in information, it's similar, but it's asymmetric. Okay, this firm invests in information, it's going to allow it to capture all of these consumers and then also compete for these 2 segments.
And what if, for example, firm 1 acquires information and then and then he establishes the prices, and then firm 2 reacts without
No,
having...
they can't do it, exactly. In stage 1, they decide to acquire information, it's simultaneous,
Okay.
and then they decide the pricing,
Which is also simultaneous.
which is also simultaneous. Yeah, it's a simultaneous game.
Okay.
The other case, could be interesting too, is like now I'm going to acquire information, but the information acquisition is a continuum, the first stage. Okay, and then in the last stage, in the pricing stage, sorry, this is the pricing stage. In the information acquisition stage, now that they know, depending on what happens, whether I acquire information or the other one acquires or not information, what the profits are going to be in the second stage, in the pricing stage. And so we have like this prisoner's dilemma type matrix in which they can both acquire and then they get pi and I. This one can acquire and this one no, in which case they get pi and I, and so on. And in this case they get pi I. Okay? Where pi and the profits, they're not the same as this and this. These are the profits in the case. It's a bit of an abuse of notation here at the okay? This is not the same pi I as this one. This is the pi I if the other one plays pi dot I.
It's pi I given pi I.
And then the book solves this given k, okay, the quality of information. And for low quality of information, k less than 3, so for k equal 2 basically, or k equal 1, right, for this is for 2 segments or 4 segments, not acquiring information is a dominant strategy. Okay? Here you have the curves of like pi n I and pi I n I and pi n I n I and pi I I. It's a function of the quality of information. Okay? So here you can see that not acquiring information here is higher than acquiring information if the other one acquires information in 2 and 1. Okay? In k equals 2 and 1. And not acquiring information is higher than acquiring information when the other one doesn't acquire information. Okay? So it's a dominant strategy not to acquire information when the quality of information is low, and it's a dominant strategy to acquire information when the quality of information is 3 or more. Okay, 2 to 3. So if the information is really good, then both acquire information. But then, notice this, the profits when both acquire information are lower than the profits when both don't acquire information. Okay? So they would prefer an equilibrium in which they are actually both going forward. It's just we have a prisoner's dilemma in which they both expect the other one to acquire information, and therefore it's better for them to also acquire information, because otherwise the one that has more information is going to take a lot of their customers. So given that the other one is acquiring information, actually either one, I don't want to, they want to acquire information. Okay, and that's the prisoner's dilemma. If they cooperate and more like, look, let's not even get in front of the consumers, I don't mess with it. And we both set some price that it's going to be without information, they will make more profits. Okay? So, lesson. In a competitive setting, customer-specific information impacts firms in two conflicting ways. Firms can extract more surplus from each customer, but price competition is exacerbated because the firms know which consumers they're fighting for. Okay, so they can target the prices to compete for those consumers. When the quality of information is sufficiently large, the former effect dominates the latter, then the firms use information, prices will be clear, or they may well be better off if they can jointly agree about to use the information. That's this. I don't know what paper this is from. Actually, this is the first time I teach this for a just because we're doing the slides, otherwise it would be like too much if we had to do this in the board. But because we're doing the slides, this is probably a paper. This is sophisticated, right? Nice. It will take us probably 16 hours to solve this model.
No, that's okay.
No, I read the 16. Now, because last time I tried to guess the hours it would take to solve something, I said 4 and 4. It was like 4 days.
It was 4 hours only
Some
for
24
8.
hours more.
This is complicated and it's kind of nice, right? Because there's a lot of play here. And if you're going to be doing theory, this is the kind of stuff that we want to be doing. Okay, insightful, non-trivial.
Insightful and non-trivial.
Yeah. If it's insightful and trivial, maybe it's also. But in general, we want to do things that are insightful and non-trivial. If it's trivial, it's probably not that insightful. It's an insight that we kind of already knew and it kind of follows. Right? And theory is not like that. Okay, and then you can get added locations into this model, but we're not going to talk about it. Okay, so let's see, what time is it? It's 1. Time for a break, so let's take a break, and then we do menu pricing.
Okay.
We don't need more examples. We've done so many examples. We need more models. We've got enough examples to illustrate like what we're talking about here. It's very clear.
Yeah, what is that?
Charcoal. No sé, a ver. Mira, sí, sí.
I saw one with microeconomics, but it was really shallow. Yeah, I don't know. For microeconomics, but for really, I'm gonna tell you because I'm really behind on this stuff. And it's actually
Vas a comer. Antes de la ensalada iba. Sí, me encontré unos parásitos y luego. Sí.
If you study computer engineering, you have to change the way you think.
No,
Because, for example, if you study
Esto
physics,
como.
you can have examples in real life. Literally is ring. Probably follow it for like your parallel. No, like a trajectory. If you study computers and programs, algorithms, they don't exist. So basically, you have to understand it abstractly. That's why it's very hard for people who study that.
A ver. Eso es muy
But
raro.
it's pretty interesting. Si querías estudiar computer science.
He's trying to keep you out of the.
Oh.
En competidor.
¿Cuánto tiempo has dado?
Dios.
¿Una hora y media?
Este no es el hijo.
¿Qué? Vale, entonces hay 15, ¿no?
You understand it?
No.
Sí, cambié con el hijo. Sí, sí.
Do you want to stay here?
You have been here for 6 hours. You have?
Sí, plan perfecto. Oye, mira que te van a decir que es una chorrada, era guay. De que las transiciones eran perfectas en plan en fútbol.
No, okay.
Sí, ya está.
What have you
That's true. But that's not, that doesn't apply to every company.
Este.
Or
Ah, sí. Ah, vale, pero está súper guay. Este me encanta.
I think
500
Chinese is the first. English is the first.
I will buy it.
I don't know if Arab was started because there's a lot of countries in Africa. French.
feeling after
But if you're going to a bigger
I don't play
city,
context games.
it's fine.
Because
Se quedar back that
el doctorado. Pues sí, aquí sí, porque la vez con nombre. Entonces, tengo que hablar con él, que ya me han dicho que sí, que es muy para la valicita. Para preguntarles, te la puedo pasar para que
for me, right now you are saying
la tengo aquí, te la mando por correo.
went to another different place.
A nivel internacional. ¿Qué pasa? Es realizar como el modelo de estado de bienestar más eficiente en cuanto a pensiones, estructura de gasto público, en qué se destina realmente ese gasto público, de renta de jóvenes, ancianos o mejor inversiones en la educación y demás. Y claro, lo que pasa es que hay algo de investigación, pero tampoco es muy profusa. Sí.
Aquí no me lo
no te he sido ahí, chico, que ya, pero mal, yo no igual como tú, ¿sabes? Con el coche.
Yo lo quiero enfocar. Yo lo quiero enfocar en desigualdad.
Bueno, ya, pero me cuesta más. Es que no lo he pensado.
Aquí en España, porque estamos viendo que es el que gana
Ya,
distribuye renta que gana más que ellos.
ya, que no sé.
Y luego, si esa también dentro de esa reivindicación, no solamente para que puedan condenar, también
¿Mercado de qué?
sería la velocidad de acuerdo.
Mercadillo. Mercadillo comida. Un edificio, sí, claro. There is a bar, yeah.
Todo en plan.
Yes.
Carne fresca,
City Center. Yes. Next to the town center. Sí.
Más complejo, sí. Vale.
No está muy sola.
Los dos principales focos son renta y luego el transporte de la en cuanto a renta, el ratio es un tema viable por el modelo de
lo que viene a ser un poco, o sea, yo pago 380 por todo.
entonces esos son los dos principales focos. Luego quiero ver un poco.
Ya, pero muy caro para mí. Hey, you went to Valencia. Did you like it? It's like one of my favorite cities in Spain. It's super nice. The weather.
Valencia va a ser
Esta mañana, bueno, así es muy fácil. Aquí se dice, esa esquina ahora se dice cuando eres un poco de vino.
No, yo me lo voy a mirar para tener también una base, sobre todo porque
Sí, sí.
empezar en Vale.
or something that you
More than 2 minutes.
Porque toda la casa está perfecta y se toma una cosa. Pero sí se música para niños. Ya. Son like the many kids of music.
No, tenemos ustedes.
No, estoy hablando con mucho de que a chiquitos se lo haga y ahora
Los medios y los equipos
me parece no como le doy a tomar mis compañeros que tienen
deben ser todo el tiempo.
Everyone wants to get there.
me han dicho que no es la pisado y que para vivir en Chile tranquilamente, sabiendo el tipo de cosas para comercial.
Veía mucho los cines.
Bueno, verdad no. Sí, o sea, y además yo pero bueno,
Okay, so we talked about the first two types of price discrimination, first degree and third degree, right? Which is group price, so personalized pricing, everybody gets a different price, or different groups with different prices, right? Now I want to talk about second degree price discrimination, which is the most, the one that's like the least price discrimination. It's the most like product differentiation, being strategic and trying to get people to price discriminate themselves, right? And that's called menu pricing. Okay, so learning objectives, be able to make a clear difference between menu pricing and group pricing. So if you learn anything from today's class, is you need to know the difference between group pricing and menu pricing. That has to be like obvious to you. Okay, what's the difference between menu pricing and group pricing? Understand how a monopoly sets menu prices and under which conditions Menu pricing is to hide profits and uniform pricing. Assess the welfare effects of menu pricing and analyze quality and quality against menu pricing and other robust service. This one we're not even going to touch. Okay? So we know the difference between menu pricing and menu pricing. And in menu pricing, you have to design the screening device, right? So we have designed several versions of the product along that dimension. You're going to first identify a product dimension valued differently by consumers. Okay? There's going to be some quality, some dimension of quality that there's going to be heterogeneity in the evaluation. And then you're going to design different products along that dimension of quality in the hopes that the consumers are going to self-select into different qualities and allow you to increase your profits. Examples. This book is so ready. It's so friendly. It has so many examples.
Are you gonna upload this to
This is online. You can download it yourself.
Oh, this is free?
Yeah. I think you may have to create an account on the book page or something, because I was trying to go through the book page and I couldn't find it. But I think you can get this for free. If anything, I'll upload it on there if you can find it.
Yeah, I was asking if you could.
I can do it, yeah. So versioning based on quality, okay? There's this thing called, or it used to be called NAGWare. Have you heard of NAGWare? You haven't heard it, but you have experienced it. You know how when you go read Diario de Navarra, or any Spanish newspaper online, or almost any newspaper online these days, and there's like a million ads, right? And it's like telling like this thing pops up and actually like close and so on. If you subscribe, or you can put me like agree and close, or disagree and subscribe. Right? This is Navi basically. It's like I put a lot of ads on the website, and then if you subscribe, then you don't get all these ads. Just like a browser. Okay?
Like Spotify, where you get all these ads, or you just can pay and then get
Exactly.
all the ads.
So you can get the ad-free version or the version with ads, right? That's another one. Software is distributed freely by displaying ads on screen, encouraging users to buy the full version. Annoyance because it's created with ads. I guess it's the digital version of me, like, hey, you should know that.
Yeah, but now like they're making it
I'm just
too
doing
much.
this basically.
Like some apps are like every 5 seconds now the ads.
Yeah, for
So
example,
they're forcing you to pay now.
Or for example, the streaming platforms. Initially you paid for not having ads, and now you pay and you have ads.
Yeah, now you pay like certain price, you have ads every single like every 5 minutes, and then you pay more every 10 minutes, and then you pay more.
So that's called NAGWare. And then version is based on time. Books. First in hardcover and later in paperback. Okay, so I have a version of the book first. In hardcover, I do two versions. One is like the fancy book version in hardcover, and then I do the paperback version that I release like 6 months later, and it's cheaper. Right? And the people who really care about the hardcover are going to buy the hardcover and put them in their bookshelf and be like fancy. And then the rest of us, I see the soft cover and look I mean lots of us. Okay? I think the book is fine. I really don't care about hard cover at all, but that's why I'm always interested in quality in that dimension. Okay. Actually, I don't think the hardcover is even available. It's just at the beginning they had a hardcover, but in the soft cover. You know, in Amazon you can select the hardcover and the soft cover. That's menu pricing. Or the Kindle version you have now. Right. Now you have a third category of menu pricing. You have the book, the physical book, hardcover, soft cover, Kindle only. Right? Menu pricing. Versioning based on quantity, software side licenses, newspaper subscription. For example, the AI pricing is based on quantity, right? If you use the best model for half an hour, but then if you will be unrestricted usage of like Claude 4.5 Sonnet, you have to pay. Right? Floor allows you to try the best model, but only for living. So let's say your usage limit has been reached for this, you have to wait until 8 p.m. until you can keep that, right? And in the internet, you use like a gambler model. If you really care, if you were using this for your work or for any kind, that's when incentives will be like, okay, if you're not using this all the time, it seems like you're using it, and you're getting these limits, maybe you should be paying for it, right? Or you should, then, and then we're going to have a different menu of options, right? You can buy the 20 baht per month version, or the 50 baht per month version, or the 200 baht per month version, right? You have like super block heavy for the people who want to try to use block to solve unsolved mathematical problems or something like that, right? Or maybe to look at mistakes that know a lot of IO math.
But it's kind of unfair pricing, right? Because even though you don't get to use the Pro model, you are feeding the Pro model with your data, right? I mean, you are the product. I'm like, why should I have to pay for a model like feed?
Well, it's interesting. You're the product, okay? And like with search, it became very popular to say that you are the product because nobody pays for search. Like you go to Google, you don't pay anything, you have this amazing search engine, right? That allows you to surf the World Wide Web for free, right? So then, what's going on? Then you are the product, right? Because what Google's doing is getting your data so you can sell it to advertisers and then they pay, right? It's like a two-sided platform. It only charges on one side of the platform because it's basically selling the other side of the platform to the advertisers. Okay, that's what we mean by your product. Now, ChatGPT doesn't really do ads, right? That's why the free version is much more limited than the free version of Google. Actually, there's no paid version of Google Search. You can pay for Google Drive space for your emails, you need more space for your emails and so on. You pay for Google Drive. They may charge for some stuff here and there for some other things, but not for Google Search. Normally, there's Google Search free. And for ChatGPT, there are different tiers, and the free tier is very limited because you are not a product. Because you're actually not selling your data. They're using you to train the models at the same time. And the main thing is they want to sell to people who use ChatGPT. And it's true that maybe there is some aspect. Okay, you may be right in a limited sense. Is that yes, they may be offering some conversion to improve your training so the model will be the best to sell to people who pay for the conversion. Okay, in practice, all these things are really very complicated, right? And when the pricing and the pricing schemes of the firms and the strategies, this is like all of strategy, right? Firms are going to have like, and if are going to be thinking a lot and doing very complex things with their strategy. Okay, we can't understand everything that we do. And we can try to develop simple models that can help us get insight into how these things work kind of like one at a time. Okay? The firms are going to be like their strategy of the firms is going to have like 40 of these things together and we're going to be using intuition more than others. Okay? But let's say we want to understand and firms out there have like menus with like 20 options and we're also at the same time using you to like train the models and so on. So there's a lot more moving parts than we have here. But to try to understand how this works and the economic insight, just do a model with two options to see how many pricing will work. Okay, you see how it works? Economics, economic theory. For some people, it's very unsatisfying because it doesn't capture everything about reality. I mean, those people can't handle this. They're going crazy because it's all about the real world has these and this and that. Right? So like, how about that? Okay, we're just gonna do the two options and see what happens. And try to understand that. To see if we can understand it at a deeper level. Okay, and that is gonna give us a language of lessons and tools and insights, and it's gonna be useful when we want to analyze real world situations. I give you guys the same pep talk every class. It's like a motivated because okay, you need it. I don't need it. Okay. So, case, geographical pricing by low cost carriers. This one I know. Okay, monopoly menu pricing. So there's one firm and it's considering having a menu with two options. And it has consumers, consumer utility, when buying one unit quantity S at price P is going to be U of theta S minus P. Okay, and the utility is going to be 0 for the buy. Okay, so we have the consumers that care about quality with the parameter theta, and quality is indexed by S. And the consumers get some utility for quality S depending on what their type, theta, their willingness to pay for quality. So, okay, and then they get the utility from pay, right, minus the price. And U increases in quality and in the taste parameter theta. Okay, you think of this as being like theta times S minus P, or R plus theta times S minus P, like in the previous class, before we solve the problem. And let's say there's two types of consumers. There's going to be just two thetas. There's not really a continuum between theta lower bound and theta upper bound. Just two. It's going to be people with lower willingness to pay for quality and people with higher willingness to pay for quality. The low types are in proportion 1 minus lambda. Then the refraction of the consumers. Refraction 1 minus lambda. Okay, and they have taste parameter theta 1. And the high types are refraction lambda, and they can taste parameter theta 2 higher than theta 1. And the utility function has this property. The utility of theta 2 and S is greater than the utility of theta 1 and S. Okay, so the utility for quality S is higher for the high types and the low types. They have more utility at any quality, and the difference in the utilities from going from lower quality to higher quality is higher for the higher types than the lower types. Okay? This is called the single crossing problem. I mean, for example, I don't know, the utility of theta S is equal to R plus theta times S, and the derivative of the utility with respect to theta is greater than 0, right? It's equal to S greater than 0, and the second derivative of the utility with respect to theta and S is equal to 1, which is greater than 0. Okay? So both of these things are going to be true. I guess we can say the utility, if theta 2 is greater than theta 1, then theta 2 times S2 minus theta 2 times S1 is greater than theta 1 times S2 minus theta 1 times S1. Okay. Theta 2 times delta S is greater than theta 1 times delta S. This is just an example. Okay, this is using the example from the utility that we saw in the vertical differentiation. Okay, and the monopolies can produce S1 and S2 at constant marginal cost, C1 and C2. Let's not use that example. Let's use this example from here. Suppose you have data, right, some software, and you want to sell the software. Your customers are going to be universities and companies. Okay, and you can have two types of the software. You can have the pro version that has all the features, and then there's like a basic version that has like a limited amount of features. Okay, and universities are willing to pay 9 for the pro and 5 for the basic, and businesses are willing to pay 3 for the pro and 2 for the basic. Okay, and there's 120 million potential consumers, of which a fraction lambda universities, high type, and a fraction 120 minus lambda, lambda universities, and 120 minus lambda are businesses. Okay, it's a way to pay. The cost is free, it's software, so the costs are zero. And it satisfies the single closing property. First of all, this is higher than this. And second, the difference between 9 and 5 is higher than the difference between 3 and 2. So it satisfies this single closing property, right? Or the second derivative, in this quick case, is difference, right? This second difference is positive. Okay, the high types are willing to pay more for quality than the low types.
But they have to be, the difference has to be higher in absolute terms or in relative.
In absolute terms.
But wouldn't it make more sense that it was like the marginal?
Well, the marginal, the thing, well, the first thing is the absolute has to be higher. And the second assumption is that the difference in the utilities for different qualities is higher.
The absolute difference or the relative difference.
Because
So for example, 9 over 5.
9 minus 5, not 9 over 5.
It's like 9
because you
minus
start
5 over 9 than 3 minus 2 over 3. I think that's
So
what
the assumption is on the difference, not on the ratio.
yeah.
of the utilities. Okay, so how would you price if, two questions. Do we want to do menu pricing or do we just want to offer the pro version to everyone? Okay. And second question, if we do menu pricing, what prices do we set? Okay. First, let's think about the second question. Suppose we want to do menu pricing. What's the best way to price? It's not trivial. How should state as the prices? I mean, 9, 3, 5, and 2 seem like low numbers. Let's say that it's like 900, 300, 500, 200. We'll just call it 9, 3, 5, and 2. Okay. 120 is 120 million. 120,000.
But we don't know the number of universities and businesses.
Sorry?
But we don't know the number of universities
You don't know the number of universities or businesses.
and it's not relevant.
And you don't have to know it to know what's the optimal mini price. You need to know the number. The numbers don't matter for whether you're doing the pricing or not. That doesn't matter for, given that you're doing the pricing, if you decided that, what prices will you set? The single closing property, it basically says that the willingness to pay for quality is higher for the high types than the low types. It's higher for universities are more willing to pay for the pro version relative to the basic version, or increasing from the basic to the pro than businesses. Come on guys, don't be afraid. Like, tell me what prices will you set? For the pro, we decided to sell both the pro and the basic. Now you can't, this is not group pricing, so we're not saying, okay, universities pay this price and businesses pay this price. You have to make them select the one that you want to sell to each, right? So which one do you want to sell to the universities? The pro. And which one do you want to sell to businesses?
The basic.
The basic. So what price are you going to set?
9 and
9 and 2. Okay.
to say that we want to simplify.
Suppose you set the price is negative. Price of the Pro equal 9, price of the Basic equal 2. Does that work?
I don't think so because even though they value more the quality of the growth, the price difference may be too high and to incentivize for them to buy the basic.
Maybe the price difference is too high.
Whatever it is.
You want to concept prices so everyone buys Pro, right?
No,
Well,
that's
no,
not
no,
when you
pero-
price it. If you decide to when you price it, it's because you want the universities to buy the Pro and you want the businesses to buy the Basic.
You have to lower the price for universities
You have to lower the price.
Exactly.
because they have to
For universities.
have some
Exactly.
consumer surplus. Like, I would put it a bit cheaper so that, of course, they would get another.
Right, I mean, are the universities going to buy, okay, the businesses here are going to buy the Basic, they're going to buy the Pro, right? Because the businesses value the Pro at 3, 9 is too high for them. So they're going to buy the Basic. Okay, so this is good. And then the universities, are they going to buy the Pro?
No, because they
See,
see
the utility for the universities, which are type 1, right? And also type 2, the high type is type 2. For the Pro is you say the 2 is 2 minus the utility for buying the basic for the universities is equal to how much?
4.
It's equal to 4, right? It's 9 minus 5.
So that's how much they value the premium.
Like,
So you have to put maximum 6, the price,
So you have to put maximum 6,
because that's how much they value
right? So at 9, what will the universities do?
go basic.
They're going to buy the basic, right? Because basically the utility of the basic minus 2 is greater than the utility of the Pro minus 9.
versus the inflation.
If you put 9, then they get 0 surplus from buying the Pro. If they want the basic, they will get a surplus of 3. Because they value it at 5. And you're selling it for 2. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So, the optimal value pricing, the optimal value for pricing is sell the Pro at 9, right? And only the universities buy. And the businesses don't buy. Or you could set the Pro at 3 and both buy. So for uniform pricing, you have to decide how much of those two guys. Okay? And we'll do another one. For menu pricing, you could set 9 and 2, like you said, right? But if you do that, the university prefer the basic, because it is a bigger surplus. 9 minus 9 is less than 5 minus 2. So you're going to choose the basic, because it's so much cheaper that even though they prefer the Pro, they only prefer it by 4. And the price difference is 7. So you're going to choose the basic. Okay? So there's no self-selection. You have a self-selection. For there to be self-selection, you need to satisfy the self-selection constraint, which is that the utility for the high types minus the price of the high option has to be equal to the utility of the high types for the lower quantity minus the price of the cheap version. This is called the incentive compatibility constraint. Okay? You have to satisfy the incentive compatibility constraint for the high types. And this one's easier conceptually. You have to satisfy also the participation constraint, easy, for the low types. Okay? So the low types, the price of the low one has to be such that the utility, the low types, for low quality is equal to 2. Okay, and then these two equations give you the optimal menu pricing. Okay? First, you set P1 to satisfy exactly the binding constraint, the participation constraint of the low types. Then you substitute this price here, right? So here you're going to have minus u theta 1 minus 1, right? Which is the price of the low. And you want to set the utility that they get from buying the high type equal to the utility that they will get combining the low type exactly. Okay, that's called the incentive compatibility constraint of the high types. So here, the second trial, they try to make it more complicated. They're like, okay, you can charge 9 for the pro and then charge 5 for the basic, so that you satisfy this, but then the participation constraint of the low types will be satisfied. Okay, because 5 is too high. Then this is very bad. Okay, for you to have this self-selection, you have to satisfy these two constraints: the incentive compatibility constraint for the high types and the participation constraint for the low types. Okay. There's also a participation constraint for the high types and an incentive compatibility constraint for the low types, but those are not going to be binding. Okay, and it's intuitive that basically you have to ensure that the price is low enough of the low type, just enough that the low type wants to participate, and then that the price difference is low enough that the high types don't want to pretend that they're low types. Okay? Let's think of it as back in terms of like the kids menu. You have to make the kids menu. Imagine if I could pretend to the kids, right? And I like the kids menu, but I prefer the other one. You have to make the kids menu cheap enough that I will buy it for the kids, right? I'm not just like cheering my head or something. Or bring them some kind of like oranges inside, or a sandwich on the side. But you also have to make, if you're going to offer a kids menu and the adults will choose it, you have to, that forces you to lower the price of the adult menu to a level that they don't want to choose the kids menu. Okay, so they don't have an incentive to ask for the kids menu. Of course, the adults are not going to ask for the kids menu, right? Because it's unlimited. But you should have it. Okay.
So, proceed. What I meant before, so it's like the marginal difference between the basic and the pro is the key point.
Yeah.
Because it's different.
The difference between the basic and the pro for the high types.
For the high types makes the difference.
That's the difference that you're going to have to choose for the price difference. That's what we're going to match with the price difference between the pro and the basic. So basically, you're going to choose like the price for the basic equal to the utility of the basic for the low types, and then you're going to be like, and now I match the price difference to the utility difference for the high types, so that they want to buy the low type, the low type product. Okay. Okay, and now we have to compare the profits of these to the profits from uniform pricing. And that's going to be a function of lambda, because we didn't say lambda here is a free parameter. So let's calculate the profits from these and let's calculate the profits from uniform pricing. Or actually, let's not do it by hand. Let's just do it. You can see that version from book, okay? If you combine the two constraints, it's 2 and 6. And your profits are going to be 6 times lambda plus 2 times 120 minus 1. That's going to be 240 for lambda. And then with group pricing, with uniform pricing, you could have set the pro at 9 and have everyone, and have only the universities by the pro, in which case your profits would be 9 times lambda, right? You should have 9 and only to lambda, which is the number of universities. Or you would set up 3 and set to everyone, which is 120 minus lambda plus lambda. So we 120. So then you will get 360. So basically, your profits are going to be the max between 9 lambda or 360. If you do uniform pricing. If you could do group pricing, then your profits will be 360 plus 6 lambda. Okay, because you will sell at the university to the universities at 9, and then you would sell the pro to the businesses for 3. If you could discriminate using group pricing, not menu pricing, between the universities and the businesses, you would sell at 9 and 3, and you would only sell the pro. And then your profits will be 9 lambda plus 3 times 120 minus lambda, which is 360 plus 6 lambda. This is the most that you could ever make. Okay, group pricing. Which is really here in this case, there's just 2 types, is personalized pricing. This will be perfect pricing combination. Also we have 360 or 9 lambda, depending on whether 9 lambda is more than 360. We have max of 9 lambda and 360 with uniform pricing. With group pricing, we have 360 plus 6 lambda, and then with menu pricing, we have 6 times lambda plus 2 times 120 minus lambda, which is 240 plus 4 lambda. Okay, so obviously menu pricing here is worse than personalized pricing, right? Because you have to sacrifice some product, some profits, in order to be able to induce the universities to buy. First of all, you cannot sell the pro to the businesses, so that lowers your profits, because you can only charge them 2 for the basic and not 3 for the pro, and you can't charge the full price for the pro to the universities. So that also lowers your profits relative to group price. Okay, so your loss relative to group pricing is 120 plus 2 lambda. Okay, you can do a difference of 2. You're losing for these 2 reasons. Businesses have to be offered a low quality product instead of the high quality one. And universities have to be sold the high quality product at a discount to reduce the low quality product. Okay? Lesson. I would say the monopolies offers 2 pairs. Price and quality, 2 types of consumers. Prices are chosen so as to fully appropriate low types of consumer surplus. High type consumers obtain a positive surplus, which we call an information rent. You notice that I'm not charging 9, I have to charge 6. That difference is called an information rent. It's a rent that the consumers are getting, the high type consumers, for the fact that I have to incentivize them not to buy this lower quality option than go, as they can always choose the lower quality instead. Okay? Okay, and then we can compare menu versus uniform pricing to see which one they would choose. Okay, so we have to compare the maximum between 9 lambda and 360 to 240 plus 4 lambda. And there can be 2 scenarios. If lambda is very high, if lambda is greater than 40, then it's going to be optimal to sell only to universities. Okay, because there are so many universities that I prefer to sell at a price of 9 instead of 6 and only to the universities. Okay, that's one possibility. And if lambda is very low, okay, that's basically from some only to universities and the uniform pricing, they make a profit of 9 lambda. Okay? Universities now pay less for the pro version, so I have a loss. So basically, if I did menu pricing, I would have a loss from cannibalization. Okay? I will be competing against my own product if I offer the basic. That's called cannibalization. Okay? I'm eating myself. Okay? If I introduce menu pricing. Because if I introduce the basic at 2, I have to lower, that's like competition, that's why the price of the item goes down. I'm competing against myself. You see what I mean? So to reduce the university not to buy it, I have to lower the price of 6. Cannibalization. But I have market expansion, because now the businesses can buy the basic version for 2. So the net gain is going to be positive if lambda is less than 48. Okay? So basically, if lambda is more than 40 or less than 48, then I'm going to menu pricing. Okay, there's a range in which there's enough businesses, but not so many. There's enough businesses and enough universities that it makes sense for me to offer the two. If I have very few universities, then I want to sell if I have a lot of universities, then I want to sell only the pro and the price for the universities, right? How the business is going down. If I have very few universities, I want to sell only the pro at 3 to everyone, to both the universities and the businesses, because the businesses are most of them. For menu pricing to make sense, the amount of businesses and universities has to be in the middle. Okay, because if most of them are of one type, I'm going to sell just the best version and the willingness to pay at that time. And that just doesn't matter so much. You see what I mean? It's like if there's like 1% of universities and almost everyone's a business, I'm going to sell at 3 to everyone at the price for the businesses, right? At the willingness to pay of businesses, remember, 3. If almost everyone's a university and there's very few businesses, I'm going to sell at 9. Not so to businesses, but who cares? There's almost no businesses. For me to offer the two products, for that to be like the best option among these 3, right? Sell to everyone at 9, or sell to everyone at 3, or offer the 2 at 9, at 6 and 2. For the profits of the latter to be the best, they have to be, lambda has to be between 40 and 48. Okay? You can do that too.
But that is, I still don't understand because imagine there 99% are universities and you price the pro at 9. No, and the business at the.
No, then you forget about the business. Then you
then
for
you
pricing
divide
at
it.
9. Only the pro is available at 9. And you sell only to universities and you forget about the 1% of the
Okay, so you don't sell the basic.
For you to do them, for many pricing to be optimal, as opposed to uniform pricing, lambda has to be in between 40 and 48. If there's too many universities, you sell only to universities at 9.
But you don't
And you
offer.
forget about the businesses.
But you don't offer the universities the basic. Either.
You could, but they're not very basic. No, you don't offer the basic.
You don't offer the
Because the
basic.
basic is cannibalization.
Right.
You offer the pro at 9, and that's it. Okay? Make sense? Should we do the math to bring them out? It's 156. We have like 34 minutes. Let me do this math, because this math is easy. And I think it's not bad. Let's try to. The camera will be here. I'm not going to raise hand. I'm going to do it here. Okay. What are the profits with menu pricing? Profits with menu?
So it's 6 lambda
Is 6 times lambda
plus 2 times
2 times
120 minus lambda.
1 times lambda, which is equal to
240 minus plus 4 lambda.
240 plus 4. Okay? Menu pricing profits. Uniform pricing profits is going to be the maximum between these two things that happen. And I could do it. I could sell to everyone at a price of 3, right? So it will be 3
3 times
times
4.
120, right? 360. Or I could sell only to universities at the price of 9, so 9 lambda. Okay, and for menu pricing to be optimal, this has to be greater than this. And that means that this has to be greater than this has to be greater than this. Right? 240 plus 1 lambda has to be greater than the maximum between 360 and 9 lambda. So it has to be more than 360, and it has to be more 9 lambda. Right? That's where we want to go. So if it's only more than, it's more than 360, but it's less than 9 lambda, and it's like 9 lambda more than 360. And so it's not more than the maximum. Okay. So this means that lambda has to be greater than 40. Right? 60 minus 240 and 20.
30.
Right?
Yeah, lambda being higher than 30. No, because we are here only considering the scenario one where lambda is higher than 40 for 9 lambda to be higher than 360.
Right. First, okay, so it doesn't matter. First it says, okay, this one is going to be higher than this one if lambda is more than 40. Right, so this is equal to, I see. This is equal to 360 if lambda is less than or equal to 40 and is equal to 9 lambda if lambda. Okay, so basically then.
No, but I think that is also interesting because it tells us that if lambda is higher than 30 and smaller than 40, the menu pricing is higher. The menu profits are higher.
Right. So if lambda is less than 40, then I have to compare it to 360, right? So then I have to do 240 plus 4 lambda has to be more than 360, and then we have lambda greater than 30. Right?
Yes.
For many prices to be optimal, lambda has to be more than 30
And less than 40.
and less than 48. Right?
Oh yeah.
But if lambda is less than 30, I'm going to do this one. Right? If lambda is less than 30, I'm going to sell to everyone at the price of 3. If lambda is more than 30, but less than something, the pricing, then if lambda is more than something, which is going to be more than 40, I'm going to do uniform pricing and price of time. Okay, so if lambda is more than or equal to 40, then 240 plus 4 lambda is greater than 9 lambda. So that means that lambda is less than 240 divided by 5. Divided by 5, 48. Okay, so then basically lambda can be between 0 and 120. And then I have these regions, right? I have 30, 40, and 48. Okay? So in this range, if lambda is very low, that means that there's almost no divergence. In which case, I will do uniform pricing, and the price will grow. It's going to be equal to 3. It's all going to be uniform. Here, I want to remember pricing in the middle range, because I have both universities and businesses. And then, if lambda is more than 48, basically, I rather sell only to universities. There's enough universities that I can, it's better to forget about the businesses and not have this cannibalization effect. So here we have the price of the pro uniform equals 9, right? And here we have 2. The price of the pro equals 6, and price of the basic equals 2. Okay, in this region. Between 30 and 40. Okay, so basically, many pricing is optimal if the proportion of high-tech consumers is neither too small nor too large, And 2, if going from low to high quality is surplus proportionally more for high-tech consumers than for low-tech consumers. When pricing improves welfare, if selling the low quality leads to an expansion of the market. Otherwise, when pricing deteriorates welfare. Okay, so what's the effect of this on welfare? In this case, welfare is just going to be, it's very easy to see what's going on with welfare. Because in this case, I was selling to everyone, right? So in this case, that's the highest welfare. Because the market size is the highest. If I'm going from here to here, welfare goes down. And then if I go from here to here, welfare, I mean here, on this side basically, if we were like on this side, here I'm going to be pricing, is reducing my welfare. If that makes sense, because if I were doing uniform pricing here, I would be selling to everyone. But here, the alternative between the pricing is to sell only to the universities. And so on this rate, between 40 and 48, the pricing is increasing a lot. Because it's adding the basic for the businesses that otherwise wouldn't buy at all. It's more like the first case that we saw with the good pricing. Remember, we kind of the triangle that we separated, and we would sell to those otherwise. It's the same idea for welfare intuition. Okay, you have to consider what would be the alternative. If the alternative is to sell to everyone, then new pricing is making it worse. It's making the welfare worse. Because, why is it making it worse? Because I'm making the quality of the basic product worse. The quality of the one I give to the business is worse on purpose. Okay, I'm giving you a shittier product on purpose, but it wouldn't cost me anything to, in terms of like the cost of the marketing of the product, to just give them the product. Right? So that's bad for welfare, because now they have to use the stupid basic. But if I would not sell to businesses, and I would just sell only to the universities and the uniform pricing, then it makes welfare better. Because now I have at least I give them this new basic version, whereas before they didn't have anything. Alright? Wonderful. And this is a very interesting set of first-order conditions. Imagine that you, after solving this problem, now you would have a first stage where the monopolist chooses the qualities undoubtedly. We're not going to do this, what it does is it takes the first order condition with respect to quality and the equations for pricing for consumers, and it shows these very interesting conditions. For the high types, we provided with the optimal quality, which is for the marginal cost of increasing quality is equal to marginal utility of increasing quality. But for the low types, we have this extra term here, which means that you're going to reduce quality relative to the optimal. Okay? We're going to equate the marginal cost to the extra utility from the quality minus this term here. Okay? Which means that if you were choosing qualities in the first stage of this game, it won't be again. It's like a monopoly problem, like first you choose the qualities and then you choose whether to do pricing or not. You will basically have an incentive. Here you can see mathematically this extra term is the incentive to make the product worse on purpose. Okay? That's called what's it called? This has a name. Damage goods strategy. Okay? You're going to play a damage goods strategy. Okay? You're going to make the good worse so that you don't compete as much with your high product. Kind of like you're already doing this in a way, because you could have been the pro and still do this and the basic, you're already making the product worse, right? And if you could choose how bad the basic is, you have an incentive to make the basic kind of like, if they have a different marginal cost, it's not like software, you have an incentive to make the basic a little bit worse, not a little cost. Okay, let's go to damage goods. For example, IBM laser printer E, identical to the original printer, but software limited printing to 5 rather than 10 pages per minute. Okay, so they give you this printer but they had like the model E for the laser printer. They had like the expensive model, and then they made a cheap version that only printed at 5 pages per minute. Physically, it was exactly the same printer. Okay, this is crazy. I said, here's the printer. We made it. We could print at 10 pages per minute. Yeah, but we make it print at 5 on purpose because otherwise the businesses will pay more for the online prints at 10 pages per minute. Right? So if I want to sell you one to print like your kids' drawings on Microsoft Paint for school, I have to make it print at 5 pages per minute, because if I don't, either I have to charge you the same as I would charge Microsoft for the printer, and they will need to pay like $2,000 for a printer, but you're not going to pay $2,000 to print like your kids' homework for the science fair, and you're going to pay 500, but for 500 I have to make it worse, right? So I have to sort of tweak it so that it's only 5 pages per minute, even though it's the same printer. You see how bad companies are? But then if we didn't have companies, we wouldn't have printers at all.
I'm thinking of the idea of if you did tweak it and sell it cheaper than IBM.
I mean, it's not like companies are bad. They do this thing, and then once they have the company, they're like, well, I want to have the different types of printer, and choose to different people, and I play these new strategies. It's not that, it's not the end of the world, okay? It's like, don't be so outraged. I see that you're very outraged about this.
Yes.
So that's it.
You are very furious.
Oh,
Okay, see, there are stories like happen all the time. Sony deleted 60 minutes, Curve 74 minutes. Sharp DVD players, DVD 611 and DVD 74. You are almost identical, but the reason does not allow to play up encoded PAL in format and NTSC televisions. A critical balance is here for the moment. You guys are lucky enough to not even know what this is. Now, when I was a kid, there were televisions and different sort of electronics. There were the world was divided in 2 regions, PAL and NTSC. I think Argentina was PAL, following the French. The French introduced PAL and the Americans had NTSC. So NTSC televisions for the world with devices that were for PAL. Following after one. But this was a thing. And you could make them work with both, but then you could also make a version that doesn't allow. Okay, menu pricing, this is a version in which you adopt the same menu pricing model, but you interpret it in terms of time. Okay, so the different volumes are different times. So you can buy the record before or after of Taylor Swift. You can buy the Taylor Swift CD before, in which case you have the utility, or discounting utility of enjoying the record for longer or for less. But some people are more willing to pay for Taylor Swift than others. Those people are called Swifties. Don't make fun of them.
nobody cares?
Don't make fun of them.
I have to tell you.
Okay. I think enough with menu pricing. And then menu pricing will locally, we're not even going to go there. So I'm going to talk to you, after 3 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about another interesting strategy called, and related to menu pricing, called bundling.
So what's the difference with menu pricing?
It's almost the same thing. Just this is a special case of menu pricing, in which the menu is, I can sell you 2 goods separately, or I can sell you the goods together. But actually, before we do menu pricing, first I have to consider, I can consider the 2 separate, or I can sell the 2 together, and not the 2 separate. And then that's pure bundling. And then you can have like bundling in which I do both. You can buy them separately, or you can buy them together. Okay, so then there's like this nice geometry of the case.
But not necessarily you have to have a better pricing, right? Because it's bundles, but you just add them all.
Yeah.
And give it to you for the summation of both products. What if you they would say they have over 100.
Like for example, shampoo and conditioner. Like most of the times you buy them together because it's like if you get them both together of the same line, it costs you less.
So you can buy shampoo and conditioner I don't know, because I don't use these products. You can buy a shampoo and conditioner like, and like not in the plastic, right? So they're like together in a bundle.
No, it's just if you have the same line of hair care.
Sorry, I don't use these products because I don't like the toxic chemicals. That they have.
Well, that's because you don't know how to buy. Like you know the you know what I'm doing.
No, it's okay. No, imagine you have like shampoo and conditioner and they come like wrapped in a sort of bundle or like in a little basket. And they're, if you put them together, they're like 20% cheaper. Than the
That's what I was referring. But do they need like
That's bundle.
but not wrapped in plastic.
Well,
It's just if you buy them together, it's 20%.
at the grocery store includes
Uh-huh.
that the machine recognizes that
Yeah.
machine. Okay. Yeah, that's an example of bundle.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a bundle. Right? What's a bundle of things? Like a set of.
So you don't have discounts associated. Like you don't offer a discount to say because I promise you I see it.
I mean, of course you can go to a grocery store and buy like the three and one and put it together and we call it a bundle, but that's not bundle.
Yeah, and it's all for you. Like you go to one museum, it's like €50. You go to the next one, it's like 50, and they say it's bundle, and it's literally €100. And it doesn't make any sense, but they said it as a bundle of both museums at the same time.
People trying to buy that because they don't know.
But technically, and they sell it as a bundle. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Okay, so there's bundling. And what is bundling? Pure bundling is when only the package is available, okay, in fixed proportions, right? And mixed bundling is when you come to sell the combined products or also sell them separately, right? Like the shampoo and the conditioner. You can buy them separately or you can buy them as a bundle. Okay, and then there's time. For example, a software suite. Right? You can buy Office, Microsoft Office as a bundle, like PowerPoint, Excel, Microsoft Word, and Microsoft Access all together, right? And it comes out in a box, so you're used to it. Or you could buy only Microsoft Word, because I only buy it and I don't do numbers, right? Or only Microsoft Excel, because I only do numbers and I don't buy it. Or Excel and Word, but not Microsoft Access, because I don't do Access type databases, right? I use like R or Stable or Python. I mean, nobody uses Access anymore, I think. Access is like the database program of Microsoft Office. Okay, so software suites are an example of this. Actually, bundling is important in the software organization because it was a key issue. It was basically the core of the European case and the US case also against Microsoft in one of the landmark antitrust cases, the Microsoft case in the 90s, which you guys don't remember because you were born. But there's basically been like 4 or 5 antitrust cases that have shaped our modern world, as we know today, related to the computer technology. First, the AT&T case, that basically antitrust agencies forced AT&T to share the patents for the transistor, right, in the 1950s. Right, basically AT&T invented the transistor, and they didn't want to share it. And then antitrust agencies forced them to share it, unleashing the computer age. Then you have the IBM case, in which IBM was forced to allow the production of Microsoft compatible computers by non-IBM computer producers. Basically had like IBM computers, and then in this case they can be clones of IBM computers, so that allowed like an explosion of like personal computers in the 80s. And then in the 90s you had the Microsoft case, which was at the beginning of the internet. Basically, the Microsoft case allowed the emergence of Google. Okay, without the Microsoft case, you would have Google, you have only Microsoft. And the search engine would be Microsoft Internet Explorer. Now you have Microsoft Edge, but you wouldn't even have that because you wouldn't have any incentive to Edge. Right? Back then, basically, The case was because Microsoft was bundling Internet Explorer with Windows. So we have an incentive to start using Netscape, which was like a precursor of Google, right? It's an independent Internet Explorer, a search engine company, browser company. And Microsoft was trying to preempt their entry by providing a free browser with Windows. Okay, so it would be more convenient and nobody would go and get Netflix. Okay, as a bundle, we would offer it to other companies and everyone could, and other people could buy Windows. Okay, that was an attempt to control the early emergence of the internet in the 90s. The 90s was the time of the dot-com boom. There were like a million internet companies that came up, and everybody was trying to kind of say, okay, we just want a little piece of this future industry which we can see some of the domestic thing. Kind of like AI today. Right? Eventually there was like a bust and consolidation and a few giants emerged, right? Google, Amazon, they were from that time. And then there have been more, a few more cases. There was actually a Microsoft case, but the other cases. The recent Google case is by the European Commission, but they weren't as important. These were much more important because they were shaped by the computer industry at the very beginning. Okay, so that's bundling and why it's important. Okay, it's important because it can be a way to preempt them. Okay, it can be a smart and we want to cover this in chapter 11. Chapter 11 is just like, okay, what's the pricing strategy for the firm bundling versus non-bundling? And it's different in the antitrust challenges. The book says, okay, bundling could be a way to make entry as profitable for a potential entrant. Okay, because suppose you have a company that produces two products, right? And you can offer them as a discount together, so you use the second product basically for free almost, or for free in the case of Internet Explorer. Then you're not allowing companies to enter the market that will produce the second product and compete, right? So it prevents competition, it prevents them. And you would say, well, but you're giving the product for free, so why do you care, right? Well, yes, not so simple. What do Microsoft values? Like, what's wrong with giving people a free Internet Explorer? Nothing wrong. So if I give the consumers the product for free, what's the point? Why do you need companies to come and compete for the product? Well, you would need it because then you're going to have like other things that you can do in other markets once you control the market for search. Okay, so you have all these arguments in antitrust over and over again. It's like always the same kind of stuff. But it's not so simple in practice, which is it? Is it should we give Microsoft a hard time and find them because they're like providing the free product? And that's what we want to connect consumers, and it's great to have free products, right? But in the long run, it could be bad for the industry and bad for consumers. So even if they're getting the search for free. Because in the end, remember, you are the product for search. Right? So if I give you Internet Explorer for free, eventually Microsoft will have complete control over the market for advertising on the internet. And it will be able to extract enormous ones, even bigger than the ones that Google is extracting now, to anyone who wants to sell their products on the internet. You see what I mean? And for that reason, you need to watch on Microsoft to have a monopoly, to use their monopoly on Windows, on operating systems, on operating position operating systems, in order to gain and increase market share in the market for browsers. Because then they can use the market for browsers to control the market for advertising. Okay, and then another interesting practice that companies do, similar to bundling but a bit different, is called time. Okay. Example, the prime example of time, and it's a beautiful example, is the printer and the cartridges. Okay, so you have two products that are related, and if you buy my printer, you also have to buy my cartridges. Right? Because there can be like a third party that produces them, and in general, I'm gonna set the Epson, and I'm gonna sell like the printer and the cartridges, right? It's kind of like bundling, but not exactly the same, because the difference is that the cartridges allow me to press discriminate people who print a lot from people who don't print a lot. Okay, so in practice I want to use the printer for free and then charge you all the surplus with the cartridges. Okay, because the cartridges allow me to have the customers self-select into paying a lot for the printing or not so much for printing. So I'll give you this printer, which is like this miraculous machine that prints images and things like it's incredible. And it's like this robot, and I'm going to reach you and you're like, wow, this is amazing, how much am I going to pay for this incredible thing that I could never ever do on my own, even if I had 1,000 years? Well, it's $20. Well, I give it to you for $20 because that's my marginal cost, or even lower, because I know that you're going to spend a lot of money buying the cartridges. Right? Similarly, also with cars, you could have a car that I can sell it to you for cheaper because I know it has like a lot of parts, right? And over the lifetime of the car, you're going to be buying a lot of parts for it, right? So the end price of the car is much higher. Whereas like maybe an electric car, I have to charge you more because I'm never going to sell you any parts for it because it never breaks. Okay. So the car, I'm not going to be able to make money from you by selling you the car in the future. So in the future, I'm not going to make money from you. The companies that my shareholders own are not going to be able to sell oil, and me as the car company itself is not going to sell me parts over the next 20 years for buying like a Tesla. If you buy a BMW, every few years you have to go to the mechanic, and the mechanic has to buy some of the BMW, but the BMW is going to run. And you're also going to buy a lot of oil. And my shareholders also own a lot of shares in other companies, and they make a lot of profit from that. Okay, so that's time. I think we're out of time. So let's finish that. Let's look at this more like next class, and then next class we start with the last class. I think we've done that. If anything, we've said too much. Well, I was saying we said too much because I talked about the electric car.